Hi, algebra freshmen. Welcome to week 2 of e-learning. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope your e-learning is off to a good start so far. If there's anything you need this week, please feel free to shoot me a Google Voice text or send me an email. My email and information are up here for you. My assignments and everything that you might need, including links to this video, are all on that tiny URL. So if you or someone you know is struggling to find assignments, send this link out, share it, spread it to the world, because this is where everything is that you're going to need. So let's check in real quick first before we jump into our topic for this week, to our calendar. We have 2 assignments due again this week, so we see those 2 yellow stars, meaning those assignments are graded. And then on Friday, you'll have that opportunity to do those makeup points in your exit ticket. So this week, our big focus is going to be on something called factoring trinomials. So let's start off today with some vocabulary. You do not need to write this down, but I did want you to pay close attention to the fact that my title has the A, the B, and the C taken out of the word vocabulary. And I want you to see if you can think about why that could be by the end of the slide. So the main vocab word today that we're going to be focusing on and reviewing is the concept of a trinomial. We have talked about trinomials before, but we need to remember today for our factoring that trinomials are math expressions with 3 terms. What we're going to see in every one of the problems that we work with today is that every problem has 3 coefficients, which are going to be, oh, I have an error in here, guys, are numbers, in front of our variable x. So our coefficients, one more time, just a reminder, is any number that's in front of our variable. So when we do our work today, when we are factoring, we're going to see problems that look like this. We're going to see some number that represents A, some number that represents B, and some number that represents C. So if you go back to that question I asked at the very beginning, I have taken out the A, B, and the C from the word vocabulary because we need to pay extra close attention to our A, our B, and our C in our trinomials today in order to factor. So let's jump right in and let's go ahead and get started. We're going to look at 3 examples today. I'm going to give you a second while I'm just reviewing some background information to go ahead and set up your lined piece of paper like this and copy what's down in the yellow box. Some of you that turned in your assignments last week, I could see that you were doing these notes with me as we were going along, and I appreciate that because it's definitely going to come in handy for you when you're doing your own practice problems. That's something to look back to. So this is still us thinking about factoring this week, but instead of looking at examples where we just have 2 terms, we're going to be looking at examples where we have 3 terms. So we aren't going to be able to use the difference of squares or the greatest common factor like we talked about last week. We're going to have to use this new method, and we're going to focus this whole week on this method called the snowflake method. I know it's getting nice outside, so it's a little weird to think about snowflakes, but we're going to go for it because I think it makes this process much easier than just doing the multiplication in our head. So the thing that we need to focus on today, and I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little star next to this fact. To factor a trinomial, to factor something like this ax squared plus bx plus c, remember factoring means breaking it down, we need to find 2 integers. Integers, just reminding ourselves that integers are just numbers. So I'm going to make myself a little note here that an integer is just a number. So we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give us this value of c and add up to give us our value of b. Now, for some of us, we can think of those answers and we can think of numbers that multiply and add together very quickly, but it's not always super easy as the numbers get bigger. So let's go ahead and let's look at our first example problem. See my very fancy animations here. We have x squared plus 7x plus 12 is our first problem. So the very first step, the first thing I'm going to think about, and I'm going to go ahead and actually record my steps down here in the bottom as we go. I'm going to make it a lot smaller though so we can still see. Step 1, I'm going to fill out my snowflake. So my snowflake is already filled in and labeled here. Hopefully by now you've gotten this written on your paper. my snowflake has space for A, B, A, and A times C. This is going to be the formula we use for every single problem. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in the numbers that I know based on my kind of example and my model here. So my A, my first problem, I know is the letter that's in front of my x squared, my number, I'm sorry. And when I know there's no number there, I know it's represented by a number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in a number 1 in my A sections of the snowflake. You might have to use your imagination a little bit to see this as a snowflake. Work with me here, people. The B is the number that is in front of just my X. So in this case, I see my B is my 7. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that into the bottom part of my snowflake. And then the top part of the snowflake that I need to fill in is my A times my C. So I have my A, which is a 1, and my C is a 12. So 1 times 12 gives us just 12. Okay. Now that I've filled out my snowflake, I'm ready to move on to step 2. And step 2 is going to have me build a factor tree for the top part of my snowflake. So the top part of the snowflake that I'm going to focus on here is the 12. So let's pick a color that we don't use yet. So the top part of my snowflake here is the 12. So I need to build out a factor tree. I need to think about what terms multiply to give me 12. So I'm going to do that over here onto the side. So I know that 12 is made up of 1 times 12 gives us 12. I know that 2 and 6 multiply to give us 12. And I know that 3 and 4 multiply to give us 12. Okay, so I'm done with step number 2. And the next part that I need to think about, we don't really want to move that out of the way, for my step 3, and kind of our last part to fill in our snowflake is to go ahead and think about using the factor tree to fill in the rest of the snowflake. So we have 2 pieces in our snowflake that are still open. And so I need to think about now, using my factor tree, which term, which set of numbers here is going to add up to give me the number on the bottom of my snowflake. So first I built my factor tree, and now I need to think about which of these sets of factors is going to add to give me 7. So what I want to do, I'm going to make a note for myself. I want this number and this number to add together to give me 7. Okay, so when I look at my factors, I know that 3 and 4 are going to add to give me 7. So in my really squiggly circles, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the 3 here and the 4. And again, I chose those 2 numbers because they add to give me 7. And now I'm ready to go ahead and write out my solution. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself some space. All I need to do now, I found my answers. My answers lie right here. Oops. My answers lie right here in my snowflake. Because I have already done that hard work, I see the 1 and the 3. And I see the 1 and the 4. So now all I need to do is go ahead and fill in my solution. The number on the top is the number that goes in front of my x. So I have 1x plus 3. And I have, in my other factor here, 1x plus 4. And this, friends, is my final factored solution to my problem. Let's go ahead and go through one more example together. We're going to do the problem x squared plus 6x plus 5. And we're going to follow those same steps that we did on this first problem. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually just going to copy those steps into our example here so that we have them to reference as we go. So we're going to fill out our snowflake first. So I'm going to go ahead and use the information I have in my problem to fill in my snowflake. So I know my x is x squared plus 6x plus 5, so my a is 1. My b is a 6. And my c is a 5, so 1 times 5 is going to give me 5 in the top of my snowflake. Step 2 tells us to build out, so I've done step 1, I can go ahead and check that off. Step 2 asks us to build out a factor tree for the top part of our snowflake. So a reminder that we are focusing on that number 5 to build out our factor tree. And factors are just numbers that multiply to give us 5. So we know that 1 times 5 gives us 5. And honestly, that's it. So I don't even need to choose the two numbers that I'm going to use to fill in the bottom of my snowflake. I know that this set of factors is going to be moved and used to fill in the rest of my snowflake. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to fill in the bottom of my factor tree now with that 1, the first factor, and then the 5, the second factor. So now that I've filled in the rest of my snowflake, I know that my solutions for my factors lie here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put a box around them so we don't forget where we're getting that information from. We're going to write out those parentheses as our last piece of this video here for today. So I'm going to take the number on the top, my 1 as my x, and then my plus 1, and then I have my 1x plus 5 coming from my second box in my snowflake for the second set of parentheses. We will go through some more examples tomorrow, but I do want to give you a quick little preview of your assignment that is due tomorrow. You see that numbers 2, 4, and 6 look very similar to the problems that we went through for today. So if I were you, I would go ahead and give 2, 4, and 6 a try today. I'll actually go ahead and put a star next to those so that you know. 12, 14, and 16 look a little bit different, so we are talking about those tomorrow. I do know that these numbers are weird, and we go 2, 4, 6, 12, 14, 16. Don't worry about that. I'm just mostly concerned that you get the problems taken care of. Please reach out if you have any questions. If not, I will see you on Zoom, and have a great day.